development has happened to us, not with us. The reason community associations were formed is because the people didn't feel like anyone was protecting or looking out for them. And that is a true problem that we have with development.
Kristi, what's the first thing you always check when you walk onto a site?
The first thing I'm doing is I'm doing a site evaluation of what I can physically see. I actually just finished a mentor call and looked at their property afterwards. And immediately I'm looking at, hey, there's overhead power lines. So we've got power and telecom. There's a sewer manhole lid up front. You've got power lines running along the back of the property. I'm looking across the street and seeing how the new development there was put in and what requirements the city put on. Very first thing I'm looking at is, what do I physically see at a property? And then from there, we get way more in the details of other due diligence. But I just want to see, do I have any red flags first?
So how did you got into this habit of checking these things first? Was it taught by somebody?
Putting in all the reps. So when I actually started, and it's like anything, when you go shopping for a car, you now see that type of car on the street, or your favorite color is blue, you're always going to see blue. So by doing, and I've developed hundreds of projects across the country, like you said, and you just start to get conditioned to go, I know that every single time, and we have our checklists and different things to do, but it just becomes a habit. Like, I can't even drive or ride my bike down the street without looking at a property, and my brain is automatically evaluating it because I've done so many deals. But it's like anything. You've got to take action. You've got to start putting in the reps. You have the right mentors and consultants and people around you who help you even know what to look for in the first place. And then it just becomes second nature.
So at your company, you mentioned a system called DevOS.
Mhm.
What problem did you build it to solve, and how does it show up on a real life Monday morning?
So I've worked with national tenants, like, let's say, CVS, Publix, Family Dollar. We do rollout programs, and they have their own internal system for managing development projects from the very start all the way through operations. When you're in construction, you have specific construction management software that helps you take a project from the time you break ground to you're open for business. What we don't have in our industry is we don't have that pre-development software. And part of the reason for that is it's completely custom and unique, and it, depending on who's leading the project, it would depend on what software they're using. So a lot of times developers could hire architects and engineers, and then they're using the systems that they have to track a project. And even to back up further, most developers only do 5 to 10 deals in a whole career. So we typically find that we're managing projects from emails and spreadsheets and calendars and post-it notes. And it's a little bit crazy because we're talking projects that could be worth tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars being managed through email and spreadsheets. So one of the things I did is, because I've done developments across the country and in hundreds of markets, I understand the steps in the process, and you start to see the commonalities of what each project takes, to where there's a framework and a backbone for each project is going to take this. There's going to be tons of nuances around it. And so what I did when I started my company is I ended up building out our own internal software that could track all of that. And what that allowed is, instead of every time my team members hit a roadblock, they had, instead of coming to me saying, okay, I got the title in the survey, we don't have issues, we're good to go, what's next? They could see within the software the automations built in to go, oh, well, the next step is that we're going to do the site plan and XYZ. And at the same time, we're releasing the geotechnical report. And at the same time, we're actually going to hire this consultant to start preparing our entitlement package. So essentially, the problem that was solved is taking our pre-development scope of work and putting it into a system to where it basically took my team members from 2 years to about 4 months of getting up to speed and being a pretty well-functioning development project manager.
So you help smaller brokerages and cities with development. When you first
Mhm.
started doing that, what surprised you about how many obstacles they had?
Starting with the cities and I actually I ran for county commissioner and was a planning commissioner for a while. Cities are, and I've worked and presented projects with hundreds of cities. They understand what the community needs and the community planning, but they don't necessarily understand the business side. So no matter which side of the table I'm sitting on or what I'm doing, we're constantly educating the local government of, this is how what you're saying we need to do translates into the business world. So just understanding that as a developer, we're the educator to kind of say, here's how all the pieces actually fit together in practice. And then taking the time and having the patience to work through that so we can come up with a solution that works well. for all sides. And what we're seeing today with cities and counties is that they are realizing that if they team up, because our communities own land, our communities have resources like parks and different places that they own the property to, but they don't necessarily know how to put the business hat on. So they're finding that if we do these public private partnerships, the city or county working with a private entity can actually create a really cool solution for the community, whether it's affordable housing, whether it's upgraded park systems, whether it's a new downtown business district, whether it's redeveloping a giant sports arena and the surrounding uses that go with that. So that's been really cool to see the evolution where our community leaders are willing to partner and collaborate, because that really is where the magic happens. And with the local brokerages and the boutique brokerages, I wouldn't even say it's a challenge or a surprise as much as it's awesome to see that what they used to do is they would have a property owner or a tenant come to them and say, "Hey, we want to sell our land or we need to lease X amount of space." Now what they're doing is they're taking all of their market knowledge and they're understanding, "Hey, I could actually take this deal a little bit further." Maybe the property owner comes to me and he's got 5 acres of land and it's zoned industrial. But I know that the city, because I'm constantly talking and meeting people here, I know that the city would like this to be some really awesome commercial mixed use property, but we have to do a rezone. So maybe instead of telling the property owner, "Hey, we'll sell your land, we'll make you $1 million," why don't we go ahead and help you rezone the property and we'll increase the value and we'll be able to, sure, it'll take another 6 months, 12 months. But when we're done, we could sell it for 2 or 3 million. So they're finding ways to add more value to their clients and make more money and just enhancing and increasing their business model.
So how do you handle the community part? Like, when you're building a new project or thinking of building a new project and community has issues, like some, people in the neighborhood, they don't want that project or
Mhm.
they want project in a certain way. So how do you handle that?
Yep. And we have that everywhere. And part of the pushback from our community members is that development has happened to us, not with us. And so we call that, and there's a name, it's called NIMBYs, not in my backyard. And we have tons of community associations across the country. But the reason those were formed is because the people didn't feel like anyone was protecting or looking out for them. And that is a true problem that we have with development because it has been gatekept for so long and so few people are in it and understand what it takes, which is why I started local real estate developers. Because if our locals are empowered to be the ones redeveloping buildings and spaces in their community, then they know what their community needs. They know what's missing. They know what should be there versus another project being jammed down their throat. So what I like to do is from the beginning, there's two ways that you could approach a development. One is you could go, "I want to help my city be better." And you could look at the master plan for the community and you could go, "Our community literally has this plan that says we want more commercial over here and we need another grocery store because we have a food desert." Then you could go, "I want to solve that problem." So then you could actually build a grocery store right where the city is telling you to build it. Or you could say, "Hey, I've got this really cool idea. I want to build this awesome community space where we can have pickleball and drinks and some outdoor sports to bring our community together." Great. Instead of picking the property first, what I like to do is then go into that city and say, "Hey, here's what we'd like to do. Let's talk to your planning department, to your economic development. This is what we'd like to do. What do you guys think is the best zoning and the best area for us to go in?" And then we reverse engineer it from there and go, "Oh, well, they would prefer we're in the C2 zone," and we find property that fits the size. And then we start negotiating with the property owner from there. On top of that, we're going to meet with every neighbor that is adjacent to our property. And we're going to talk to the city to say, "Hey, who are the stakeholders that we need to talk to?" So that way they know that from the minute we started, we engaged them and we brought them along. And you're not going to win everyone. You're going to have some people who just don't want change at all. But when you start with a community first approach and you start with looking out for how can I help as opposed to how can I pad my wallet, it goes a long way.
And the way you're talking, you seems so passionate about development. And I saw one of your interview podcasts where you said you got into real estate by an accident.
Hmm.
But what inspired you, or what really something that you enjoyed about this industry? When you actually got.
Yeah. Yeah. So, like you said, I mean, I grew up in a small town in Ohio, 2,500 people, and I picked quality of life by moving to Florida. And I ended up working for a sign company who was putting up signs for CVS Pharmacy. So I got to see, and I had no idea how our communities were formed growing up, but I got to see, oh my gosh, I'm putting up signs on these new buildings. And there's these people called developers who are not just building CVS, but they're building the shopping center next door and the housing behind. Oh my gosh, this is how our communities are formed. That's so cool. Like we can be part of that. So through that, that's when I joined a development company in Florida, ended up getting an opportunity to work in California. And what I found through that and the different doors that opened is we got to do projects that could actually make a positive impact in our community because I had gotten to a point where I didn't want to build another shopping center just to build a shopping center. I wanted to do projects that had an impact and a purpose in our communities and that were going to be successful long after the development itself was done. Because many times a developer comes in, they build their location, they sell it afterwards, they take their huge chunk of change, they move on to the next town. They don't think about what's left with the employees, with the business, with the maybe street they didn't finish building or whatever that is. They didn't think about the long-term community impact. And that's why in 2015, I started my own development and consulting company. And through that, we were able to work with companies that, use clean energy, whether it was hydrogen fueling stations or using hydrogen fuel cells to power buildings. So using clean energy projects, also getting into affordable housing, teaching locals how to become developers. And now we're focusing on our community-led sports, wellness, and entertainment destinations because I I love the fact that we can truly positively impact a community. And when we have our locals be a part of that, then you're creating something sustainable that will last long after it's done. So what draws me in is it's basically a giant art project that is community building and you get to pull a lot of people together to make it happen. And that's putting that puzzle together is so fun for me.
That's so inspiring. So you have worked on
Mhm.
big projects and small projects as well. What is one thing small town or local developers must get it right that many ignore?
I would honestly say it's the understanding that, and to back up, we have over 16,000 communities in the US that have a population of less than 10,000 people. If you can flip that single family house, you can take that building downtown and you can flip that and you can create new thriving businesses downstairs. You can create the housing and upgrade the apartments above. And now instead of impacting one family and one life, you've changed what, 50? Plus you've created spaces and jobs and places for your community members to go. So I think the one thing that we as locals forget is that we can do it. We have to get the belief that we can be someone who does it. But a developer, all they're doing is they have the vision and they take action and they know they're going to build a team around it to make it happen. So as the local, you also have that unique ability to know what's missing in your town. Where are you and your friends going, man, I really wish this was here so we could go do this. Or, oh, it'd be great if I could move out of this crappy apartment, but there's nothing there for me to go move to. So just really understanding that you yourself are the only thing in the way of becoming a developer in your town and making that positive impact and taking a different career leap. It really is, but it is a simple, you can do it. So like it does take action. It does mean you're going to have some risk, but it is something that you can do.
Sure. I mean, the mindset when you think about doing
Hmm.
something, you just got to take an initiative. I completely agree with that. So you wrote
Yeah.
about,
And if you decide and you go and you realize, oh, I got more information now, that didn't quite work. I'm going to pivot a little bit. Okay, cool. And then you keep going forward. So it's not like you're making one choice and saying, okay, that's it. It's either all or nothing. You got to keep making more decisions along the way.
yeah, I mean, you do something and then you get to know, whether
Yeah.
it was doable or not. And if it's not,
Hmm.
like you got to find a way to do it or, you get help or at one point you decide, okay, I cannot do it and it's
Yeah.
not doable. But if it's doable or if there's a way to do it, so why not? Let's find a way and do that.
Yep. Exactly.
I agree with that. So you wrote that you help with dry utilities and
Hmm.
entitlements, permitting. Which of those three causes the most surprise delays? And what do you do to beat it?
I will say from the standpoint of dry utilities, the reason we have a whole division is that, and what that is power, gas, and telecom. So if you're building a new ground up site, or even if you're repurposing an existing building, people forget that need to talk to the utility companies and they have long lead times for designing the power upgrade or just getting power from their current poles to you. Like that takes time and effort and engineers to go through that process. And in California, it can take you every bit of 6 to 12 months to go through the design process to get to a contract before the power company can even think about scheduling you in the field. So a lot of times we will get a call when someone is well into construction and they will say, oh my gosh, we totally forgot to submit to the power company. me, the developer, I had no idea I'd even needed. My civil engineer thought I did. And now I've got to figure this out. And now they have 4 months left to take what will actually take 12 to 16 months, if not more. And so they literally finish construction with their projects and they're just sitting there for another year waiting on power, which that is the most unfortunate call that we get because it's so avoidable. And when we get into projects early, what we do is we will tell them as soon as you're submitting for entitlements, which is the very first phase of getting all your approvals through the city, you need to be submitting to your utility providers as well. That way you're doing those concurrently. And by the time you break ground, you've got all the plans in place so you know you can get power by the time you need it. And then from a entitlement standpoint, one of the challenges that people will call and tell us is they'll say, the city or county just threw us this big curveball. And what they really did is they didn't know the right questions to ask when they started the process to understand, oh, well, first we do this entitlement process and we talk to the design review committee, but then we have to wait 3 more months to get on the planning commission schedule. And then after that, we go through what's called a permitting process, which could be another 3 to 6 months. And so what they thought was a 3 month process based on a short initial conversation actually was a 8 to 12 month process. And now they have to hire all these other consultants that they didn't know about. And it's not that the city forced a new requirement on them because that was there from the beginning. It's just they didn't know the right questions to ask or have the right team members in place to educate them to be able to define the process clearly from the start. So those are the most unfortunate calls that I get when we're called in at the 11th hour, but it is something, and it's part of why I started local real estate developers on top of consulting, because the more education we can get out there to help people understand here's how you do it, then the less obstacles and less money and time they're going to lose on a project, which will allow them to have a successful project and do more of that, which is the ultimate goal, is to get more people doing development, because then at that point our communities are going to be much healthier in that standpoint. Now, all of that to say, you can definitely still have a city who, even though you do everything right, they just decide they don't want your project. And that can be very real. It's just not the norm. Normally, it's just the fact you didn't know the right questions to ask. But sometimes the city truly can continue to put roadblocks for whatever political agenda they have.
Yeah. Wow, amazing. I mean, you explained it really well. So on a development team, you often have many players and
Mhm.
brokers or like engineers, architects, general contractors, a city. So how do you keep everyone aligned so the projects keep moving?
Part of that is you as the developer not only have the vision, but you understand that you're ultimately responsible for everyone and everything. And that also means that you're responsible for making sure that the team members, even if they're coordinating directly and you're just CC'd, that they're playing well in the sandbox. So you are the referee or the monitor, you're the person who's there, and they should all have a good working professional relationship. But I will tell you, there are some times where you get the different egos and personalities in a room, and you really do need to come in, diffuse situations, and keep everyone aligned and going forward. Part of how you can avoid that, typically when things do get frustrating, it's when scopes and expectations weren't aligned properly from the beginning. And finger pointing starts happening because people go, oh, I don't want that $50,000 issue to be my fault. So I'm going to say that, no, that was the architect not putting that on the plan. And then the architect goes, yeah, but the civil engineer did the survey and they didn't point that out. So the more organized you can be from the beginning, it's also why we have DevOS and our software that we built. The more that your whole team appreciates it, because they know that we're flowing in a system. We all understand our roles and expectations. We all understand who's going to do what when. And I'm just a huge fan of over communication, making sure that everyone understands for each deadline and each deliverable who is responsible and for what components. And your team will appreciate that, because when it's messy, they feel that, they get stressed, and yeah, then that's when things start to go sideways. Again, extreme ownership, it all comes back on you, the developer and or the lead consultant, to make sure that everyone's rowing in the same direction, and when it goes sideways, to get everyone back on track.
Yeah, I mean, you can say that because now you have a team and you've been in the business for some time. But was there a time when something went sideways and you had to deal with it, and you were running behind the time? So
Oh,
was there a moment?
yeah, there's been plenty of times, especially early in my career. And my company had been putting pressure on us get get projects done by a certain date. In turn, I was putting this blanket pressure on one of our best contractors. And so basically if we were working on 30 projects, they probably won in the bid process 10 of them. And they had put their senior project manager managing all of those and overseeing, and he was a freaking rock star. I was so young, though, I didn't necessarily understand everything that was happening. And all I heard from my company was, how did you miss this by one day? And how did you do this or that? And so I'm constantly hearing, oh crap. So I am putting so much pressure on him just based on the smaller details that it was the owner of the general contracting company who was a big firm. And he was like, hey, let's grab coffee. And he explained to me the bigger picture of the situation and the team member and dynamic. And he said, we're going to lose my senior project manager if this situation stays the same way and if this communication stays the same way. And he said, I can tell that you're young, you're hungry, you know what you're doing, but how you're applying it and how you're speaking it and how it's coming across. You're making my guy not want to do this anymore. And if you lose him on these projects, here's the downstream impact to that, because my next guys are not going to be this good. And he understood like what my owners of the company were going after, but there's a way to make it all work. So thankfully, I was in a position in my early 20s where I was willing to take that criticism, and not a constructive criticism. And it exponentially helped me in my career in understanding, because I'm constantly in development dealing with people who are 20 to 30 years older than me. And by understanding how to better communicate, it kept the best senior project manager on board, who has since gone to many different companies. And guess what? He and I have worked together on many, many, many other types of projects and have a great relationship now because we figured out how to communicate. So yeah, you'll never have it all figured out. And I think if you understand that you can always learn and grow, and you're willing to have the difficult conversations that don't always paint you in the best picture and that you might not know it all, you're going to go a long way. And people are going to appreciate that.
Yeah, oh, very well. You're completely right. Sometimes we think that, you know, others' mistakes, like we're thinking they're making a mistake, but at the end we realize like the way we are handling situation is
Mhm.
is kind of a way that we should not. I agree with that. So you once said A players want to play with A players. How do you find the right contractors or subcontractors for a project if you're in a less busy market?
You will in smaller markets, it is going to be more difficult, but you are going to find your diamonds in the rough. Especially when it comes to contractors, it's going to be more about, you probably really only have 2 to 3 options, and then it'll be based on their availability. So sometimes you might need to work with a B player and help them become an A player. So that goes again back on you to build the systems, the processes, and set the parameters to where they can win the game. But really at all, like anytime you're trying to get any of the strategic partners, from contractors, engineers, architects, brokers, lenders, attorneys, you want to ask questions that make sure that the person that you're hiring is competent in that asset class and that type of project that you're doing. So you don't want to hire a contractor who only builds houses to come build this commercial multi-tenant, multi-use building for you, because it's two completely different things. Same way someone who builds flex warehouse space for industrial probably doesn't understand the complexities that apartments or condos have. And it's not that they can't build it. It's just that you're going to pay for their lessons learned. And it's when you get people who do the reps over and over and over again in a certain type of thing that you're going to benefit from their knowledge and their expertise. So you can't always perfectly get your A players if it's a smaller market, but you can ask the right questions to at least make sure you're as aligned as possible and that you've got the right team based on that market on your side for the project.
Great. So when you go develop a project, like how do you decide who takes what risk or who gets what reward?
Sure. So for example, we had a 5-acre affordable housing project in Nevada, northern Nevada. And what we did, anytime I'm partnering with someone on a deal, I will make sure that we have different capabilities. So for that project, my team and I, we are very well versed in here's how we put the development team together through site selection, entitlements, permitting, construction management. That's our bread and butter. We can do that in our sleep. Like we got that part. So the people I wanted on my team were, I wanted someone, because we were going to hold it, I wanted someone who understood the LIHTC tax credits because it was one of those affordable housing deals. I wanted someone who was well versed in property management and operations on the back end, someone who would do our underwriting and then also work with the lenders to secure the loans, because those all align together. And for the other partner, it was He had the capital, but he didn't necessarily have the time to invest a ton into the other facets. So by pulling those three strengths together, we all were able to take our strengths and go, cool, you got the money, we got the expertise, you've got this expertise over here. Let's do this project together. And then we broke it down based on the team and the effort involved. So then we valued our sweat equity for the ones of us who weren't bringing money a certain way. And we all sat at the table and said, okay, how do we structure this to where we all feel like this is a win for us in the long run? And so for us, there was a development fee that would have been paid at but certificate of occupancy. So once we got the units all leased up, there would be a fee that would be paid. And so we figured out the percentages between all the parties and all the work and time and because I would have been paying for my team for 2 years to do it. And we figured out how that developer fee would be split between that group. And then we figured we would hold the property for another 10 years. So now this is a separate bucket. And we said, okay, so based on how we split this fee, here's how we're going to split the ownership equity of the property. So in 10, 15 years when we sell, this is how the profits would get divvied up from that way. And typically what I like to do is whoever needs more capital first or earliest gets less equity later. So if you're willing to wait for the payout, you get more equity later. And again, it's the same conversation of what is fair to everyone based on the effort we're putting in, based on the money we're putting in, and what does that look like? And that's where commercial real estate and development are completely custom. And it's not like, hey, you get exactly this. And that's why it's frustrating for people because they're like, can't you just tell me it was a 35, 35, 25, this or that, and then you split it this way? It completely depends on every deal and the partners involved. The biggest thing I will say is when you set up a partnership, don't just think about that one project or deal. Think about in 20 years and maybe doing multiple projects with that same team. What would make you feel good here on this first one and still make you want to partner with them and do 3, 4, 5, however many more deals, over a 20-year time frame? And if you structure it thinking about the long game, not just the immediate win, it's going to go a long way.
Right. So, in your experience, what's the number one mistake that causes most deal teams to run out of momentum
And which
when you're building a project? Like, what's one mistake they make?
that would like take a deal that they thought was a development deal and all of a sudden it's dead?
Yeah.
Or a lot of that is not doing proper due diligence up front. So whether it's making sure you have utilities, making sure the city allows you to do what you want to do, making sure you have the right team members involved, making sure you can actually get a loan on the property. There's a lot of upfront due diligence that you can do to make sure that downstream you can get things to happen. With local developers and with people in some communities, what we find is that someone goes, cool, I want to do this with this building. So I went and bought this building. And then I go into the city and tell the city I want to do this. And now all of a sudden, the big bad mean city tells me I can't do with my property what I want to do with my property because they failed to realize that, yes, you can buy it. Yes, you can be the owner. But our communities then have overlays that say, here's what you can put in certain areas. So a lot of it is just being naive, maybe to the entire process and picture. And that's where spending a little money and time up front doing due diligence can really kind of vet and say, these would be the deal killers. Here's how we can mitigate it and go forward, or go, no, I can't buy that building. I can't do what I want to do there.
Sure. So, you teach local developers through your LRED program. What's
Mhm.
mindset shift you see them making when they go from I have land to I'll actually build?
So what I love to see, and I just had a mentor call earlier today, is we've got the people who are taking action. And I will only mentor people that have an active project that's underway because the gap from someone wanting to do something and someone actually doing something is bigger than the Grand Canyon. So I only work with the people who are actually already doing something. But what I love is when I see their eyes light up and they see the clarity of, oh my gosh. Like when we have any questions or challenges along the way, we know that we've got you as the backstop who can help us. And it's the people who actually take action are, probably 80 to 90% there. And it's just knowing that, oh yeah, we were on the right track. Yeah, we wanted to do that. We thought that was the right next step. And now we have that clarity and that certainty that that's what's next. And that to me is my favorite part because the more that they gain that, the more confidence they're going to have, the more likely their project will be successful and the more likely they'll be able to do multiple projects. And they won't need me, but they'll have that confidence to then go do that in their community. And as a result, then other people watching them are going to go, maybe I can do that too. And then they can get more people in their community doing that. And now we've got more locals in there improving the community, and we don't need outside help. We just need our locals to believe that they can step up. That's the really cool part.
Amazing. So you have executed very different project types: industrial, adaptive reuse, housing, clean energy. What process piece stays the same no matter what the use type is?
Literally the process of here's the general steps of how you go through a project, from here's how you go from site acquisition to so the order in which things are done are generally the same regardless. And it truly comes back to that due diligence piece that highlights, hey, for this project, we're actually going to have big pushback with the fire department because they don't understand hydrogen yet. So instead of waiting for our fire meeting to happen during permitting after we're entitled and, a year into the project and $5,000 in, let's have that meeting up front, because we need to make sure that the fire department feels safe and comfortable with a project. We know it is, but we need to educate them. So let's move that meeting up 6 or 8 months to make sure that it happens at the right time. So due diligence at the front is of the property, of the neighborhood, of the community, of what you want to do, of putting your team together. That's the biggest one. And then it's all the same general steps to go through. You go through entitlements, you go through permitting, you get your utilities, you go through construction, you get your tenants and you lease it up, or you go to put it on the market to sell it. So generally the process always stays the same, and it's during due diligence that helps you know which stuff is the highest priority to reshuffle when.
So think of a project that didn't go as planned. What was the surprise and how did you fix it?
I mean, no project goes as planned. I think I think even though you can outline and define it, we actually had a land use attorney on a podcast I do for local real estate developers yesterday, and she said the same thing that I always say, is that the project the developer starts with is never the project that you end with. And you have to understand that because there are so many things, you've got site restraints, you've got utility restraints, you've got city planning and zoning maps, you've got local community and neighbor input, you've got so many facets that go into designing what you want to do, that you have to be willing to go, I'm going to make some concessions along the way. I'm not going to make the big concessions that completely change my project from the core of what it was, but I might have to make smaller rooms, or I might have to add more parking. I might have to, whatever it is, you have to understand that you're going to make concessions regardless, and that you're going to uncover things along the way. You don't know what's underground. You don't know what's in the walls of a building. You don't know before you get a title report back, what easement might be running straight through the property. So I think it's understanding that stuff will go wrong. We had a project in Northern California where it was like a 5-phase project, huge, massive one. And we got to phase 3 and we needed a ton of additional power from the power company to be able to bring it in. Well, we thought, okay, well, we already have power. We literally already have power at the property. We can totally get more. Well, the power company came back and said, we cannot give you more power from that source. We need to pull from over there, across the street, inside of someone's property. Said, okay, cool, plan on it. And they're like, the problem is, back in the 50s, we never obtained an easement to be able to access our own equipment there. So we can go maintain it, we have the right, but we can't make a new utility tap that it gets on their property to come to you. You have to go figure out who owns that property and then get them to sign an easement to then allow us to tap into that line and come across. And now this phase 3 of this project, was probably a $200 million project. And now all of a sudden, because the power company in the 50s didn't get an easement, because otherwise we would need to get power from like 2 miles away, and that would have been millions and millions of dollars. So now all of a sudden we have to go through this investigation and figure it out. I did. Turns out there was a couple who was in the process of getting a divorce that I needed to get aligned on the same page to sign a piece of paper that gives us rights to their property. So it's like, why would they just sign that out of the kindness of their heart? No one's going to just do that, especially when they're in the middle of a divorce. So I like to say development is a chess match, a poker game, and like detective all in one. And it uses every skill that you have. And I remember I drove up to the Bay Area on a Sunday. I brought my dog because I was like, I think we might need a pet involved to loosen people up, and just sat them down, explained what it was. We looked at it, and we ended up coming to an agreement where they signed that day. I brought a mobile notary there. They signed that day, both signatures happened. And in exchange, we ended up saying, hey, why don't we, because they had wanted a fence and they wanted a couple minor improvements to their property, like, let me build that for you. Like, you guys took the time to agree to this and do it. We're going to spend $15,000 to give you what you've been wanting to do, and you guys didn't have the money to do it. But it took that That whole process was probably 4 months, and you wanna talk about white knuckling, because if we couldn't get the power for that, that would've there were lots of stakeholders internationally that would've negatively been impacted. So it was fun because it was a win in the end, but there was definitely some wrinkles and gray hair moments.
Yeah, and you get to learn a lot, new things, and you
Oh,
did.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
So many people believe if the market is hot, I'll build. So how do you decide when not to build?
See, that's a tricky one when it comes to development because projects take 2 to 5 years. So that's where really understanding the market trends and where something's going that comes in play, because it's not like, "Oh, I want to build a fourplex. Great, there's an open lot. It allows 4 units. Let's build it and 3 months later it's done." That's where it's very key to understand where where the trends are happening, where people are moving to, what the demographics are, what the traffic patterns, when, who's building, if you want to do commercial, who's building massive residential that gets you enough people to an area to allow for it. Now, that's all bigger city markets. That's not what I recommend or teach our locals to get into. So if we think about our small communities, that all goes back to, what does this community need right now? What is it missing? And who's coming in? Like, for example, I went up to Hancock, Michigan, and one of my friends was describing to me, she's like, we want to buy this property and turn it into this really cool, it'll be restaurant, brewery, have saunas and cold plunges and blah, blah, blah. And it'll be this great spot on the river. And I remember looking at that property just on Google Maps and going, oh my gosh, this town's in the middle of nowhere. It's like 3,000 people. It's super small. It looks like it might be a dying town. And I grew up in a small town in Ohio. So I'm like, that's so risky. Why would you invest there? But I spent 2 days with her in that market. And we met with business owners. We met with the city officials. We met with economic development corporations. We met with the business incubator. We met with small businesses. And what I realized is it was actually a thriving community that had freaking, they were building rockets going to space. And they had a problem because they didn't have enough housing to allow for all of the new employees that were coming in. They also had a technical college that was bringing in people, and there were so many positive things that I wouldn't have known as an outsider, that once I was there and I saw the vision and I saw what they were trying to do, I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is a slam dunk," because we see and the trends that are coming in, and we've talked to all the people impacted, that's a no-brainer. So that's where, and in their projects to get phase one open, it was every bit of 9 to 12 months, and then they have future phases. So it'll be 3 years before it's all done. But by phasing their project and by understanding where the market was going and where the town and community were going and where the city officials were putting their efforts to grow and bring people in, it was a slam dunk no-brainer, to where everything has risk, but you can de-risk it by really understanding your exact market.
Perfect. Very well explained. So what's one regulation or city rule you wish you could change because it stops good projects cold?
I mean, what I find interesting in general is that if we have a natural disaster, we can magically bring all the powers that be together and remove all the red tape, and we can rebuild massive infrastructure and massive highways and massive buildings. And yet, when that disaster is over and we go back to status quo, we have so many disconnected departments and entities who don't really care anymore, who are so disconnected and don't feel like they're together, that they'll push the paper when it hits their desk, but they're not as motivated as they could be. So projects do take longer. And because they're all working in silos, they're not thinking about that local community itself and how, hey, if we all work together, we could do this, we could solve the affordable housing crisis. Like, why does it take us 5 years to build a 200-unit apartment complex for housing when we need housing yesterday? And if we came together, we could build it in 6 months and it could be permitted and done and completely safe and compliant. So I would love to see us start to, instead of every new elected or hired city official putting in one more piece of regulation to put their stamp on something, for us to go backwards in our code and our ordinances and our red tape and go, why did we put that here? Maybe it was a requirement. All the time I'm finding stuff to where I ask the question why, and it's like, that was from the 1960s. Do you realize we're in 2025 right now? And the reason they put that parking requirement was because of XYZ, and that has no applicable meaning for today. And when we do that, we can unwind it and we can find a way forward, but you're doing that on one project at a time. I think we need to go into our codes and our governments and our red tape and say, why is this here? And start unwinding that to where it applies to today's stuff. And I think the more that we get technology and AI and get out of paper files, and the more that we have the possibility of making that truly happen in our lifetime.
Great. So you have built over 450 million in projects. How did you go from one market to running many deals across the country?
I have always worked on rollout programs from when I started in Florida to California. So I have always worked on, again, hundreds of projects. So you are forced to build in systems at that point that work. And that's where you do see the commonalities of, oh, I need to do these things and these general steps for every single deal, and then assembling the right 8 players per market. I think the biggest thing is every time you enter a new market, you go physically meet with the people and the players and the stakeholders in that community, whether it's the local government, whether it's architects, the engineers, the brokers. You need to get in deep with a community to truly understand what makes this community work and tick so that way your project can be successful. And using those local engineers and architects who have 20, 30, 40 years of experience and history in that community, where you might have a year or 2 months of experience, but now you're leveraging their expertise. So understanding that development is a collaborative approach, understanding that if you come in and don't go, it's my way or the highway, and you go, hey, I want to do this together, that you can go to multiple markets, you can work on different asset classes, and you can be incredibly successful. And for me, I love a challenge. I get bored when things are the same, or so I prefer a new market, or I prefer, let's go work on hydrogen. Great. Let's go work on this 10-acre public-private partnership for this sports and wellness complex. Great. Oh, let's go redevelop a new baseball stadium that's going to take 20 years and be super complex. Okay, cool. I personally just, the more complex, the better for me, but that's just my personality.
Great. So you just mentioned about wellness complexly. You talked about community-owned destinations as well, like sports
hmm
wellness complexes. What's the business model behind that? How does it work for locals and investors?
Yeah. So for Elevate, which is our roughly 10-acre, which is evolving based on current conversations, but it's our roughly 10-acre space. It's where we take sports, wellness, and entertainment and put it in one spot. Because if we think about it, we why do we have to go to a bar or restaurant to try and meet people? Where can we go to where we go out in public and we meet our community members, and it's a place where we all belong? It doesn't matter what your title is, what your status is, where you're at. When you show up to this place, you belong. As I've traveled and moved in different places across the country, I've personally always used beach volleyball as a way to get into a community and start to build friends. But there's lots of people who can't play sports anymore. Or maybe it's a mom who wants to do a Pilates class and she has a kid and doesn't have anyone for daycare. So what we're solving with this is, instead of, again, development happening to a community, we want it to happen with a community. So we're building these locations with locals, by locals, invested in by locals, for the locals to use. So basically, this concept is a combination of indoor, outdoor, pickleball, volleyball, tennis, basketball, soccer, all the lawn sports, but also indoor, outdoor dog park and facility, and a food hall that has 10 to 12 local vendors and restaurants who can come in and share with the community, and a sports bar with immersive simulators with golf and all the sports. But then also the outdoor entertainment area for theater, for music, for movies. And for Florida's locations, we have a lazy river that goes around it. And then we have walking trails and everything throughout the park. And then the one piece that most places are missing that have that is the wellness component, because we want to keep people healthy versus fixing them once they're already broken. So we have studios. So you've got all your classes for yoga, Pilates, Zumba, dance, a boutique gym. But then also we bring on athletic trainers. So that way you can get scraping, cupping, stretching. If you tweak yourself in pickleball, you can come in and go, oh my gosh, like I don't want to go to doctors and insurance and waste a lot of time and money, or maybe never fix your problem. And now that's why you're bent over. But you can come in and you can figure out exactly what you need to recover and get back out there and going again. Or maybe you're just a sports addict like me, and it's like, hey, how do I properly warm up or cool down or stay warm between games and matches? And they can give that along with the nutrition and health. So basically, this whole concept is to create a place where it the whole community belongs. And so then from a funding standpoint, how this works is we will have a combination of funding mechanisms. We'll have private accredited investors, so the traditional investors in deals. We'll also have a crowdfunding platform, which is what we created with local real estate developers. And that is a way for the community to put in $500 as opposed to 100,000, to where you can put in that money and you can be part owner of the deal. And then we'll have the third component, which is leveraging the public private partnerships. So whether it's city or county land, and bringing in nonprofits, because we want a good portion of this to be free to the public. The fact that you live in a community means you get to come do this, not that you have to pay a monthly fee to belong, because then we're keeping people out. Then we're not doing what we said we were going to do. So things like the outdoor sports, the walking trails, the dog park, the lazy river, things like that can be free and open to the public to where we can all come gather. And if you want to pay extra for other services and to do some extra wellness or to go grab a bite to eat, by all means, you could do that too. So it's super complex and it's multifaceted. And it's by putting all those different revenue streams in there, it's allowing it to be a project that can be profitable and can fund the parts that are free to the community.
Wow, amazing. So, excuse me. When working with cities, how do you balance moving fast and doing good for the community?
You can move fast as long as you are not skipping steps. And I think that's the key. We're not taking shortcuts. And the reason I paused is I only have one speed, and that is fast. Like, we're going to do something, we're going to take action, but we don't skip steps. So if we need to get community buy-in for a certain part and we should hold 3 meetings, we're going to hold 3 meetings. And if that means that adds 3 months because we need to do it to where we can hit morning, lunch, and dinner timing for everyone to feel like they were a part of it, then we're going to take that time and do it. But we're going to also move fast in the sense of we're going to do our due diligence to go, when we do submit to the city, we have a complete package. We have checked all the boxes. And when it comes in, they're not kicking it back to us saying we missed half the information. So you can move fast by being thorough, by being complete. But it's definitely not by skipping steps. If something needs to be done, you make sure, because this project, this isn't, I don't want to save a month to then have something happen on the back end that makes this project not what we all wanted, not what we all intended, because it needs to be successful 10, 20, 30, 40 years down the line.
Very well. So what type of projects do you think will boom in the next 10 years that, people aren't watching it?
I mean, with AI and with technology, there's going to be a lot of changes and shifts in our trends and what we do. What we're already starting to see and where institutional money is flowing is it's going into health and wellness and it's going into experiences. And that's where I think the more that AI and technology come into our lives, the more it's going to take the work that would have taken days or hours or weeks to put together, and it's literally done in seconds now. So it gives us more time to be human, to be together, to gather, to have the conversations like this. So we need to create more spaces where we can hang out and we can enjoy each other and we can have wellness and stay active and healthy and recover. So I do think the health and wellness area is going to be a huge component. And I think we're all kind of tired of the screens. I think we all want to find a way to disconnect and to connect with another human being face to face. So we're seeing a lot more trends around that as well. And a complete side, well, completely different than community and gathering and whatnot. But I'm a big fan of our flex industrial space and our trades. So it's going to be a long time before technology can come in and say, hey, we're taking the place of your electricians, HVAC, plumbers, landscape, all of that. So having flex industrial space and leasing it out to those types of businesses, I think is also going to be a pretty good play.
You just mentioned tech and real estate is really changing how things are done. So
Mhm.
what technology or process are you excited about right now? And what part of your business will it affect first?
I love the fact that potentially, I mean, love our architects and engineers, but with 3D model, there's already so many things that are out there. One, I love the fact that we could potentially get to a point where AI and technology are drafting our plans for us. And so we're speeding up the process. So now something that might have taken an architect's team 2 months to do, maybe it's happening within minutes. Now you're still going to need a human to verify and to do certain things, but I'm very interested to see where that could go, as well as when we submit to the city, some physical person is physically looking at every single page, every single nut and bolt and keynote and requirement, and they're making sure that it fits the code. Well, technology could scan that if you put in the right parameters, it could. So it could actually take a lot of the plan check process and expedite that, which is interesting. Um, Construction itself it's ripe for disruption. So whether we are prefabricating things, whether we are building stuff in the field, whether we're completely changing just how we build things could be completely disrupted by technology. And it's exciting in the sense that maybe something that took 3 years to build could now be built in 3 months. So just thinking about solving problems like a housing, like like creating more spaces for us to play and have fun. It's very interesting to think about how that could all change and transform and come together.
Great. So how do you measure success beyond money? What tells you a project really worked?
That is pretty much the only types of projects that I will do now when they are focused on much more than just money. Clearly, you need to get returns if you have investors or even if it's your own money in a deal. But to me, the measure of success is how many lives did we impact from that project and what was the ripple effect from that? Because there always is. It doesn't matter if it's not positive, there's still a ripple effect. And it's just understanding that relationships, connection, community, collaboration, like those are the key things that really just as humans, as people that bring us together and either we had a great day or a bad day and it's not because of how many dollars came in our bank account or didn't. It's the interactions with people that we had. So for me, for me to even touch a project, it has to be something that will make a positive impact on many, many lives. And whether it's our team members, our consultants, the community, it needs to align from that standpoint. That's where I'm at in my career because I have, for 20 years I've done the things that bring in the money. So I'm now allotted the freedom and the time to now work on things that are more passion project, but they also make money, but they're much more rewarding and fulfilling.
Amazing. So what can architects and designers do to make small market projects run smoother?
I mean, they're the local connection that they understand what the codes are. And they already do a good job of guiding the people that they work with to understand the city's process or understand how maybe the contractor will work. So I think the architects can play a big role in communicating if their developer or if the team isn't as experienced as they could be. And I would say for the most part they do.
So if you could make, you know, go back and talk to your younger self like 10 years back, or when you started like 20 years back, what advice would you give to yourself?
That nobody has it figured out. It does not matter if you are the CEO of the top company, if you are Jeff Bezos. It does not matter if you are Elon Musk. It does not matter if you are the big fish in your small town. Absolutely nobody figures it out. You never cross this threshold where you go, I am a grown up today and I know everything. And so, with that understanding, even though I charged forward fast, I think I would have charged forward sooner and with way less imposter syndrome. Uh, because the reality is, the reason you feel imposter syndrome is because you haven't done something before. That's the only reason you're feeling it. It doesn't mean you can't do it. It just means you haven't done it. So you get to prove to yourself that I was able to do that hard thing. And for any of us, if we look back and we go, what were some of the hard things that we overcome growing up as a kid, as an adult to this point in our life, we would be pretty amazed to go, oh, that mountain, that actually wasn't as bad as I thought. And the person I became as a result, that was incredible. So now every time a challenge comes up and I go, oh man, this is hard. I actually smile and I go, I'm about to grow a lot as a person right now. Bring it on.
Yeah, that's
And
a good way to.
secondly, I would also say, and what I'm doing now that I didn't do the first time, is that there truly are no destinations. And we put our head down and we grind and we say, when I get this, then. When I get there, then. When I gain this experience, then. There is no destination. The true magic is being present and enjoying every bit of the journey, of the boring parts, of the exciting parts, of the monotonous day by day, of the unknown, of the uncertainty, and going, cool. Like, all right, I don't know how we're gonna get there, but I'm enjoying today and we're gonna figure it out.
It's one battle after another. Like, you keep
Hmm.
grinding. You're right. So if a developer, you're talking about a new developer, come to you with $500,000 and a lot of determination, what's the single move you tell them to make first?
I would tell them to get very clear on their vision because that much money is very dangerous if they are not clear on what they want to do and why. Development is hard. You need to have a very strong why. So when you do have those obstacles and those hurdles come up, that you keep pushing through. So I would almost say that's a very dangerous developer if they physically had like, cool, I got 500,000 in my bank account. But I would put it to dangerous in a good way, but you need to get very clear on why you're about to embark on what you're embarking on.
Great. So what tool or system saves you the most time or keeps you from making a big mistake?
Our software. Um, Just staying organized. Too many times people make mistakes because they forget. And so staying organized and having systems and processes is huge.
Okay. So for an investor evaluating a local developer in a small market, what red flag would you tell them to look out for?
I would say look out for how clear they are on what did they give you a comprehensive pitch? Did they have a clear business plan? Because things aren't going to go as planned. And especially in a small market, you're betting on that person to be able to do what they say they're going to do. So you're looking for the intangibles. What have they finished in the past? What have they started and not finished is almost more important. Did they, did they start college and not finish? Did they, and I'm not a fan of the piece of paper anymore, but did they quit more things than they finished? Are they organized? How do the people around them hold them? Are they held in a high regard? What is the opinion of that? I'm looking for way more of the intangibles than the deal itself because I want to know, can that person finish what they started?
What's the best advice you have ever received about leadership or people?
Listen way more than you talk. To really um, to understand that we're dealing with other humans and other people, and they're going to have different things in life that make them go up and down. And the more that we can openly, authentically communicate together, set clear expectations, and just keep that open line of communication, the more likelihood you have of success because people are the hardest and the best part of running companies.
Great. Before we close, if our investors or somebody from our listeners would want to contact you, where they can reach out to you.
Yeah, I am no longer invisible. So if you were to just Google my name, you would find me on almost every platform. You can go to kristikandel.com. You could go to localrealestatedeveloper.com if you're curious about that. And for our new Elevate projects, if you want to just stay up to date on those, we've got elevate-communities.com. But yeah, if you find my name and it's me responding on any of the social platforms, I truly love engaging with people and connecting and just hearing more about what they're doing.
Perfect. Great. Thank you so much, Chrissy. It was wonderful to have you on.
Awesome. Thank you.
Great. So this is Real Talk. See you next time.